Good evening, and welcome to In Conversation with myself, James Campbell, from Intellect Books. And it's with great pleasure this evening that I introduce a friend and a long-term colleague, Professor Joseph Hancock II. Joe is based at Drexel University, where he's the Programme Director for Online Retail and Merchandising. Joe has over 20 years experience in the retailing industry. He is a master event planner, a former executive director of the Popular Culture Association, a man who runs many conferences and has many responsibilities. He's also a prolific author. He's published many books with Intellect, with Bloomsbury, and other publishing houses across the world. And of course, he is our principal editor at Intellect of our journal Fashion, Style and Popular Culture. So without further ado, I'm going to try and bring Joe in and see if he is available. Let me just see what we've got going on here. Okay. Just waiting for Joe to see if he can join us. Hey Joe, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you very much for joining me.
Great to be here. It's
I,
nice to see you finally. It's nice to
I
see
know,
you.
I know. We've been talking. Well, Joe and I have been chatting on the phone about various projects, but yeah, we haven't seen each other for some time. And I guess that normally we'd be attending conferences and working together on, I don't know, workshops and events multiple times per year. So yeah, since lockdown, we've not had the opportunity to work or see each other. I see you're still in the closet over there, Joe.
I am. I'm still in my little closet. My office is the woman who lived here before me. This was, and for all of you that are anti-fur, I apologize, but this was her fur closet.
Oh
So
wow.
I had it converted to my little office, and I always tell people when I'm talking to them that I'm talking to them from the closet. No pun
Right.
intended.
Well, it is great to see you. How are
Good to
things
see you.
going? You well?
Everything's good. Yeah, everything's going well. It's been a transition. I actually, a lot of people don't know this. A lot of teaching people know, but not a lot of academics. But most of my teaching is done online lately because I run a graduate program at Drexel University. I run the Masters in Retail and Merchandising, and we have a strictly online program. We don't have face-to-face courses for this program, and it's been pretty successful so far. We've had about 34 students, and we've only been in operation for about less than 3 years. I've graduated my second class of students, so I'm pretty proud of that, and it's gone really well for me. It was quite an adjustment for me to learn how to teach online, and I know a lot of people have been forced to do that, and I think the area of fashion is very difficult for a lot of folks because they're so used to just being able to show and tell in the classroom, and they're used to being able, and students are wanting to touch and feel things, and you really can't do that virtually. So it's really hard, and it's also hard. You know me, James. I like to keep people excited. I like to keep people entertained, and so I've come up with a variety of methods. I've become very in tune with using Camtasia. And so every week I kind of give everyone a live video as if we're on Instagram in my shirt for the week, and just kind of ask them how they're doing. And then I have a fashion and film class that I teach remotely. So they're getting to see me through the lovely world of Zoom. So I think that's great as well.
Oh,
But no,
great.
everything's going well.
Oh, good. Yeah. So it's nice to hear that. So so Drexel basically we're moving towards that kind of method of digital sort of communication and teaching prior to all this pandemic stuff happened anyway. So they
Yeah.
had the foresight to move that way. I guess.
Yeah. We've always been Drexel. One thing that people don't know about Drexel University is it's one of the first schools that actually did teaching online. And then there was this, plethora of schools that started doing it. So, but we've always been on somewhat of the cusp of online education, which is great. And then I'm very fortunate. I work, so as you know, I'm in the Westfall College of Media Arts and Design at Drexel University. I'm actually really fortunate that I'm kind of a hybrid between Westfall and Drexel University online. So I have a ton of support with Drexel University online, and they've done such wonderful things for me. We've actually been able to go in and record retail stores and retail spaces so that students can actually visit those spaces virtually from the comfort of their own home. So while we've been going through this COVID transition, a lot of things with myself and my colleagues, like I said, it hasn't changed. I think the challenging disciplines, and I'm sorry if you guys can hear that, that's my dog. I think the challenging things with disciplines, such as fashion design, are really the hand holding and showing students how to create garments and how to create those things. But I haven't really had those problems.
Okay. Well, while we're talking about Drexel,
Mm-hmm.
because I've had the opportunity to visit many times and to help
Yep.
deliver workshops and things, and spent quite a bit of time in the Haggerty Library. But something that I always found amazing, and I've had the opportunity to visit a couple of times. Excuse me if I've got the wrong name, but isn't it the Robert Fox, the fashion, the garment collection?
Yep,
Maybe
it's
you can
it's
tell
the
people a little
Penny
bit
and
about
Robert Fox. It's the Penny
that.
and
That's
Robert Fox costume collection that's run by our fabulous Claire Sorrow, Michael Shepard, and Monica. And I'm so upset I can't remember Monica's name. It's the last name. There's three people that basically run the entire collection. And actually, one thing, I know the folks up the street in New York might get a little jealous, but
it.
at Parsons and FIT, but actually Drexel. One thing that people might not know about our collection is we probably have, they're starting to figure it out because for years our collection was just stored in those large metal storage containers that they use for shipping. We never had a curator. It's actually been in my lifetime at Drexel that we've gotten Claire, we've gotten a curator. We might have probably one of the oldest collections in the United States, costume collections, and that is really quite dated. I'm not a costume curator. I don't know the specifics, but we might have the oldest collection in the United States. So that's one of the things that has been really fascinating about our costume collection. And we just got a gallery. I think it was the last time you were here that we
Hmm.
finally officially now have a gallery for our collection. Of course, no one can see it right now, but it's a wonderful collection. And I shout out to Claire and her team because they've been wonderful and they've been supportive. I'm actually doing a project with them right now. As you know, I'm writing a book on jeans.
Yes.
It has been the vein of my existence, but it's going to be a good book
Yeah,
when it comes out.
I was gonna ask you about that a bit later, but as you've mentioned it, why don't you just tell us a little bit of that? So that's a forthcoming project with Bloomsbury Publishing.
It
Um,
is. It is. So one thing that the people that are on Instagram right now that don't know me, I actually take costume history and garments from a different perspective. I actually look at how popular culture has used those garments and really reinvented those garments into what they are today. I'm not your traditional historian. Some of my scholarship, I've been accused of being a high level, um, what's the word? High level, oh gosh, I just forgot it. Almost like a high level reporter. Okay.
yeah, no,
The
yeah,
serious
I can see
scholars
that.
have said that my writing is somewhat like a high level journalist. High level journalism, that's
I
it.
think you should take that as a compliment. I think
I
that's a
do
compliment.
because
No,
as you know me, I try to be really approachable. And that's because I want anyone to be able to pick something up and look at it and read it and have fun with it. And so that's kind of how I do my work. And so I've been working on this book on jeans. What I'm really excited about though is I've been working with it's somewhat of a little bit of a surprise in the book, but I've been working with a local designer who is at one of our competitors, Thomas Jefferson University, and I believe fashion, a lot of fashion production, and as you know this, um, millennials and Generation Z, they're really interested in fashion with a cause. It's got to
yeah,
have some sort of cause behind it. And so she actually did an entire denim collection, all jeans, that actually has the faces of victims of sexual assault
wow,
imprinted on the garments. She interviewed these people, she talked to these people, and then she did an entire collection of both men and women, and she dedicated the collection to them. It's a great collection. I have lots of pictures. And so I'm going to be featuring, she's actually in my Future of Jeans chapter. She's going to be kind of the highlight of that chapter because I think we've talked a lot about sustainability with denim and we've talked a lot about social responsibility, but I really think this ideology of cause is really
mhm,
important as we move forward in fashion, especially with what's going on right now. I mean, I think that, we think that research is saturated in fashion and everything's been done, but hello, a light bulb has just gone off for everyone. There have been so many marginalized groups and people that really were on the cusp of fashion or on the sides of fashion, and we really haven't told their story. So I
Yeah.
believe there's a lot of research that needs to be done still, and it's going to be really exciting as we move into the future to see all the types of scholarship that comes out and move past the traditional ideologies of what scholarship is.
Yeah, that's definitely trends that I've been seeing. And then on here a few weeks ago, I had a Dr. Amari Souza, who's a great scholar, and he's working a lot on representation of African Americans within design. And that's, moving into fashion as well, and that's really interesting. And then again, sustainability. I was just looking at some of the books. I can't mention any names, but I was just looking at some of the books which we have been contracting over the last couple of weeks, and there's definitely some hot, high-hitting sustainability fashion titles coming. So, and like there's just this ethics as well, ethics and sustainability. I think within fashion across. You've kind of slightly touched on it, but I wanted to ask you about something else you're well known for, which is this concept of brand storytelling.
Yeah.
How would you define that, and what's that all about, kind of thing?
So what I'm known for, most people know me as the guy who did his, okay, so this goes back to me telling history a little bit differently. Everyone, and this is kind of what I'm doing with jeans too. Everyone knows me as the guy who did his dissertation on cargo pants. I am the cargo pants guy. And so,
I can't, to be honest.
Well, as you tell you tell graduate students, be careful because you're going to be, no pun, branded as to what you did. But what most people don't understand or don't know is I used cargo pants, but I used them as a vehicle for telling how a garment is, the meanings and the associations of garments are twisted and turned as they evolve and they go through the time continuum through this process that we call branding. And, this notion that a lot of people think branding is an invention of the 1990s, and it just went forward. But it's been around since, the dawn of I want to even say the late 19th century. It's been around since. I always point out to Levi's and say, ever since we've had Levi's, we've had branding, but we even had brands before that. But anyway, what I did was I looked at this ideology of how consumers really like to hear, and they really relate to this notion of storytelling. And if there's a story, then they're really engaged, they become more engaged with that garment and what they want to buy. And so as we move forward into the future, and you know this too, so many people sell so many things that are so similar. It's as you get, and I have to say this, as you get older and more mature, you always wonder why your parents stopped buying clothes. Why did mom and dad stop shopping? What made them stop? Well, they've seen it all. They've gone through that cycle. So, but what entices people to want to buy more is this notion of creating stories around products and making consumers want to buy them. And so really the idea of brand story is that, branding is just like storytelling. We really, I always take Target as an example, the last place I worked. Target's really good at telling stories about their products. You go into the store, it's very plain, it's very simple. But you're going for that product. And why are you going for that product? Because they told you a great story on television. When you saw that ad on TV, boy, there was a great commercial, and boy, they knew how to relate and create excitement around, I don't know, a shirt or soap, or something, that a necessity, toilet paper. Target's really good about creating excitement about toilet paper. So you go in for that product. And that's really what most of my research is still about, the ideology of storytelling. What's funny is, and I'll just tell you this, I'll tell everyone this, is I did most of my research probably around 2006. And the first book I did on brand storytelling really came out in 2009. And really, it continues on. It's actually this notion of storytelling and people creating brands about themselves and stories about themselves continues. I think Instagram, this thing that we're using right now, is all about storytelling. It's creating stories every day, and that's what it is. So, and then for you guys, the first thing I ever did was the book on fashion and popular culture, where I talked about Lady Gaga and the way she dressed to tell stories to the LGBT community, how she related to her audiences by the way she dressed and told a story. And not necessarily the music, the way she looked, and you liked her story.
Well, while we're on this, I'm just going to plug both of these books. So Joe's been referring to, I believe, Brand Story, which is a Bloomsbury book.
And then
Ta-da! Oh, I was going to say that.
I'm a retailer. I got products.
Nice. Okay, so Brand Story is one you basically you also did a new version of that recently, I believe. Did you not, a couple of years ago?
In 2016, I did a book. I did the 2016 version. I'll just reach behind me, this one. But there is a new version coming out in, I'm to complete the manuscript in 2021, and it'll probably come out in 2022. And Brand Story will be no longer. It'll be called Fashion Branding Stories, and
Okay.
it'll be done by Bloomsbury. I actually this book actually sells better in the UK than it does in the United States. So I have gone over
Wow.
the pond, and I'm working with Bloomsbury UK doing the third edition of this.
Well, we have fine taste over here in the UK. We are sartorially superior, some would say.
Exactly.
Not me. All right. Well, I've been plugging my competitor enough. So tell me a
Yeah.
little bit. Tell me a little bit
No,
about
but
the book you published with us first of all, as well, because
no. So
it's a great
yeah,
book.
so you've really, like, Intellect really has allowed me to continue on in this notion of branding. And one thing that the big one that I always get I still get talks on, is this one that I did with you, and that I did with Jocko and Ann Pearson Smith and Veronica Manlow. So that was really a great book for us that helped push this notion of branding forward. And this actually came from, I don't know if you remember, this came from we were going to do the first special issue of the journal, Fashion,
Mm.
Style, and Popular
Yeah.
Culture. And we thought that we would get maybe, 10, 12 papers on the topic. We ended up getting 40.
Hmm.
And so it was, at that moment, it became a book. And so it was one of those things where we thought this actually needs to be a book. So that's what we decided to do.
And we'll go into the journal in a bit, but the fun thing about that, which was also interesting, was it was an experiment as well. That
Yeah.
Intellect's founder, unfortunately, he's passed away, Masood Yazdani, a great publisher, great man. He thought he would experiment with that, where trying to take journal content and sort of repackage it as a book, which was really good and worked in many ways. And I think it provided that content for a different community and a different user group, and definitely helped take that to a broader market. I think so. It was an interesting experiment, and one that we're always playing around with experiments for sure. You were talking a little bit there about Target, and I did before I connected with you. I gave you a bit of a plug and talked a little bit about your extensive
Mm-hmm.
history,
Yeah.
and all the different sort of hats you've worn. And am I correct in saying that you have about 20 years of retail experience before
Mm-hmm.
academia, and I
Yep.
believe a lot of that was with Target, right? And yeah,
I,
just tell us a little bit about that, but also how did you end up making that transition from retail into academia? Because I know you're not the only person, kind of, of your, kind of in your sort of, I suppose your kind of your group who's come from that period and then moved into academia.
yeah, so I'm one of those people that started working in retail when I was in high school.
Mhm.
And the first company I ever worked for was a company called, it was the Gap. I worked this is a weird story. I worked for the Gap it was the first retail store I worked at. And then I left the Gap and I went to County Seat. So I worked for Gap for about a year and almost 2 years. And then I went to this retailer called County Seat, which no longer exists. And then I went back to the Gap in college, my junior year of college, and I stayed there until like 1997. So I stayed there for 10 years. I graduated from college in 1989, and I started at the Gap in 1987 as a salesman.
The golden era of the Gap, that is, as well.
It was the golden era. I worked for Gap. I worked for Banana Republic. So I worked for both divisions because it was at that time that Gap acquired Banana Republic. We also had a brand at the time called Hemisphere, which was the really high end. Was when Gap decided they were going to test like being in the real high end, and it just didn't. Hemisphere didn't last very long. I think they only had maybe 10 stores total, and it just went away. And then a lot of people don't know this, but like Old Navy was not. Old Navy actually started out as Gap Factory. Gap Factory Outlet, and they turned some Gap stores into this Gap Factory Outlet. They now have Gap Factory Outlet, but Old Navy started as that, and then they turned it into Old Navy. So all of these things happened kind of when I was with the company, and I did that, and that was like my first job. I call that boot camp. That's where I learned, how to manage people. I had some wonderful mentors, some wonderful people, and then I left that position and I went into, and I'll back up. So I was in school until 1989. Actually, it was in college. When I was about 21, I actually fell in love with my professors. One professor I fell in love with was Dr. Kathleen Rowald, who's retired. I also had, you're going to know this person, Dr. Sharon Lennon. I had Dr. Lennon as a junior in college at Indiana University. And so I really admired these people. And I thought, you know what? I want to be like them when I get older. So that was where it was placed in my mind at that time. And then so I talked to Dr. Rowald, who was the department head, and she said, it's important for you to go out and get experience. If you want to get your master's degree, you can come back. So I went to Chicago, I worked, and then I moved back to Bloomington, and I stayed at Bloomington, and the Gap actually paid for my master's degree. So when students say, you know, why did you stay at Gap for so long? They paid for my master's degree. They were nice to me. They were good people. And then I moved to Columbus, Ohio. I reconnected with a couple of friends there. I actually got a job at the Limited headquarters. I worked there for about a year and almost 2 years. And then I was recruited by Target, and I worked for Target starting in Columbus, Ohio, and I moved myself out to Portland, Oregon. And I was in Portland, Oregon, and I had the Pacific Northwest. I had Oregon, Southern Washington, Idaho, Utah, and Montana as my territory. And I was a field merchant for them. So I actually never left school. I actually got my master's degree, and then I started working on my PhD, and I never stopped working. And I just thought, you know, eventually someday I will do this thing called academia. Along the way, I was really, really well mentored. I never thought that before, but I realized how well mentored I was. When I finally decided to go into academia at Drexel University in 2004, as we both know, the world of academia is somewhat different than the working world. And it can be, it's kind of like a sink or swim mentality. It's what's fun. Okay, so here's the irony with me with academia. Academia is a world of educating people. But when you get into academia, no one tells you how to do it. It's kind of sink or swim.
Yeah.
You have no people educating you on how to survive. So when I came to Drexel, it was kind of sink or swim. But because I had such great mentors, I literally was able to transition into the job that I had. And I owe it all to, someone who doesn't teach anymore. I owe it all to Dr. Patricia Cunningham. I will never forget Trish. She's been so phenomenal for me.
Shout out to Trish Cunningham. She's an excellent scholar and still a real force to be reckoned with on the conference circuit.
She is. And then I met some wonderful people outside. And it was like, oh, and I have to tell you this, my master's thesis advisor was Jana Hawley. Dr. Jana Hawley, when I went back to Janice helped me a lot too. But anyway, so the transition for me was not hard. I know a lot of people struggle with just going to school and then like quitting their job, going to school, and then getting their PhD. And I think that that's a lot harder than what I did. I think the fact that I was working while I was doing it made it a much easier transition for me than it did for a lot of people. Because when I left industry, I was probably in a middle management career. So I had been dealing with a lot of the difficult things you might deal with in academia, but in the working world. So it was easier for me to transition. And then from there, I've kind of just grown. But I've had great mentors. I've had Trish Cunningham. I've had Joyce Sperling. I have to tell everybody, as you know, start talking about the journal. Most of my associate editors on the journal were my mentors. So believe it or not, when I decided to do this journal, I reached out to my mentors and said, "Hey, you want to do this?" And they said, "Yes, if it's done this way." So my mentors actually, and they still mentor me on how to do the journal. But most people don't know that.
But this is a nice segue into the journal, but just before we do that, I noticed we've had quite a few comments coming in, people talking about like how difficult it is to transition or indeed just to begin a career in academia because of exactly what you've said.
Yes.
So first of all, if anyone in the audience has any questions for Joe or myself or any talking points you want us to highlight, then please do just drop your questions in the comments. But just before we move into the journal, I was just wondering, in terms of that transition, do you have any like brief top tips that, you know, for anyone who is looking to move?
Yes. My top tips are this. Before you start to go into this notion of academia, number one is a lot of people still think that all you need is a master's degree to go into academia. I would say no, you need a PhD. And why I say you need a PhD, many people don't. I have a lot of colleagues at work who come to me and they want to try to understand, how do you do research? That's what a PhD does. It teaches you how to do research.
Yeah.
Yes, it's expensive. Yes, it's a lot. Yes, it's 3 years of dedicating your life, but it teaches you the process of research. The second thing is don't go outside your comfort zone and meet people and find good people that are positive. My mentality of the journal, we are the journal of not being pessimistic. We are optimistic. We are an optimistic journal.
Very true.
And so I think it's very important that you find people out there that are positive, that are a positive force for you. And sometimes those people aren't in your discipline. And sometimes it's great to have people that aren't in your discipline, because they can really help you and mentor you. The other thing that most people don't tell you about academia, because they want your tuition dollars, is you must be willing to pack your bags and move to anywhere.
Yeah.
Because the jobs are hard to find. And when you find a job, then you must move. And you have to be willing to do that, because it's just something. And I really got lucky. I always say this, I got really lucky. And I'll give you an example of why I'm working at Drexel. My PhD advisor, Patricia Cunningham, says, hey, I got a friend they need someone at Drexel. She told me they need someone at Drexel to teach retail. You should apply for the job. And so I did. And my professor was friends with someone at Drexel, Kathy Martin, and that kind of helped me through the process of getting my job. So it's kind of who you know and how well you continue to network, and reach out to others to get that first job. But I tell people this all the time: be willing to go anywhere. Be willing to just pack up and go. And a lot of times I find people that want to get into academia, but they don't want to go anywhere. They want to stay where they are.
Yeah.
I have a great colleague who is from the Philadelphia metro area, Colleen. Colleen is great. I love Colleen Moretz. She literally drives to West Virginia to teach at the University of West Virginia, and her husband, I think, still lives in Delaware. So she was willing to do that. So, I mean, I think it takes a lot out of a person, but you really have to be dedicated and committed and want to do that. And also at the same time recognize that a lot of the big schools, and you know this, a lot of the schools with a lot of students and a lot of the well-known schools, they're in the Midwest. You know, everyone thinks they're on the East Coast. They're not. They're, Iowa State is.
Yeah, Kent State, Ohio State. Yeah, that shocked me when I first went to the International Textiles and Apparel Association. I was expecting it all to be sort of New York fashionistas, and of course it's just all these people who, as great as they are, but they've all been teaching home ec and stuff initially,
Yes.
or they've all come out of the the Midwest great state system in terms of the universities, like you say, Ohio and Kent. They're the ones who rule the roost in a lot of these sort of disciplines. And I think that's definitely people who think about getting into fashion. Perhaps they think London College of Fashion, they think like you said earlier, sort of FIT or Parsons, those kind of places. But really, a lot of it is definitely kind of out there in the Midwest or in Birmingham or places like that in the UK and things. I was just going to skip. We had a question come in from Disneyana. It's a good question because in my preamble discussion, just hyping you up a little bit, I did mention that you have been involved in many conferences, but I know you're involved in your own conference now at Drexel. So first of all, tell us a little bit about that. But more importantly, I've just been asked whether it is going to be taking place next year, and if it's going to be taking place in a face-to-face traditional manner, or whether it's going full virtual or anything. So maybe just a little bit.
Great question. So we are actually, we are going to have the conference. I am going to start working. We actually at Westfall have something very exciting happening. We are getting a new dean, and he is starting September 1st. Jason is still finishing his position. He is from Arizona State University, and he's coming to the Westfall College. And yeah, we're happy. So I'm waiting for him to get here. But one of the things I have proposed to my department head, and she thinks it's great, is this notion of we're going to maybe have both. So we will have the ability for people to do both face-to-face if they want to, or Zoom or virtual if they cannot attend. I think that, and also I have to tell you this, one of the side gigs that I've had that, I started in 2010. A lot of people don't know this, but I planned and executed, I was an executive director for events. I planned and executed conferences for 10 years of my life. I have to tell you that the conference circuit needs to wake up, because I think that digital and Zooming is going to be the wave of the future. And, I think that more people are going to do that anyway. So I was actually trying to plan to do that somehow moving forward, because one of the things I also think that is very valuable about conferences. So the answer to that question is yes, we're still doing the conference. We're trying to figure out the format. The second thing that I want to say is I think conferences also can be recontextualized as we move into this new ideology of what education is. I think a conference in and of itself is a class. It could be a graduate class where you go and you look and see the way that it would be set up. It could be there's those executive ed weekend classes. It could be set up like an executive weekend class. So one of the things we're looking at and toying with is actually the conferences maybe become courses, graduate courses at Drexel.
Interesting. That's a cool idea.
With that's your because all courses have to have contact hours. So 2 full days of contact hours, and then a project for the students to do afterwards. So we're thinking of doing that as well. But I did want to plug that we are, as you know, we are trying to host the first United States editors meeting of Intellect editors. So we are planning for that. So you're actually the reason why we decided to do this. So we may do this in such a case that the editors can come in as Zoom, or they can come in as face-to-face, depending on where they are and how they want to do it. So, but we're going to wait and see what develops with COVID, and if there is a vaccine that becomes available, I'm hoping for that, and moving forward into that reality. We'll see. We're going to address it as it comes up. But yes, we're still going to do the conference.
Well, just a couple of things to add to that. Like one, it's great that you and Drexel are kind of adapting to these situations, and you already were anyway pre-pandemic. Yeah. For me, and I know for some of the people tuned in here, I think it's very important to have the opportunity to be able to attend conferences. So even under a pandemic, to be able to switch it up so we can use Zoom and these different platforms, brilliant. But fundamentally, I truly hope, and I know that some of my colleagues who are online here definitely will want to get back to that face-to-face opportunity as well, because I think that kind of networking and interaction is vitally important. And we all need it as well. We all spend our time siloed working on these specific projects. It's nice to actually be able to go and shoot the breeze with people in a face-to-face kind of environment.
Well, absolutely. Absolutely, I agree with you. But the other thing that's going to happen, and I think that this is going to be the future for the next 2 years, is because with this, with what's happened in education, I think a lot of the folks out here in academia land are going to have travel funds cut. They're not going to have money to travel because there has been huge cuts everywhere. At my university this year, I'm not getting, we're not getting raises. They've cut their contributions to our retirement, because they have to find ways of balancing the budget. And so, and travel funds are going to be one of the first things that go. So, but you still have to give young scholars, and you still have to give individuals a place to present their research so that they can share ideas with individuals. So that's why we're trying to figure out how to do it in both manners. And I think that that's really important, and especially for those that are tenure track.
Definitely, that's a very good point. That's a very good point. Well, I guess without further ado, should we chat a little bit about the journal? So
yeah, sure.
Joe's a principal editor of Intellect's journal Fashion, Style and Popular Culture, which is a journal we are extremely proud of, and it's definitely one of our most successful in terms of its impact, both in terms of the academy and in terms of social impact beyond the academy. And then, of course, also it has high circulation subscription rates, and we're there on a number of those kind of citation indexes and things of that nature. So it's an excellent journal. I just want to offer my personal congratulations and thanks to you for steering such a brilliant ship, especially through such rocky times as well. But yeah, Joe, I mean, it's a pleasure working with you on this project. Why don't you tell people a little bit about what the aims and scope are, how you envisioned it, and why it's sort of so special and so different?
Well, how it's different is I envisioned, so when I was a young scholar and I was like trying to find places to publish my scholarship, and I was looking at ways that scholarship was done. I went with Intellect because you are I always have my publishers of original thinking. I have my bag behind me that says that.
We
And
make a good
so,
bag.
huh?
We make a good bag, that's for
Yes,
sure.
you do. So I literally was trying to think, because there were so many people out there that were doing things differently. And we were so, and you have to remember, and you remember the time I was doing this, everyone was calling it research. Everything was research, research. And the other thing was there was this vacuum. You know, there were journals out there that had tried to do this combination of bringing the arts and humanities into fashion publication, but there was still this ideology that people that studied phenomenon of the everyday folk didn't have a place to go. And I became the area chair because of Patricia Cunningham. I became the area chair of at the Pop Culture American Culture Association of the fashion area, and I've done that. I've done that since 2004. And time again, people would come up to me and say, "I don't have a place to publish this. I've looked and looked, and I don't have a place to publish this." And I'm like, "Well, what's wrong with it?" And inevitably, there would be something that didn't fit the box. There was something that just didn't fit that box. So I said, this is an opportunity to create a journal. And actually, I have to tell you, my associate editor's board, as anyone could see, that's Sean Cole, Jennifer Craig, Susan Kaiser, Patricia Cunningham, Ann Pearson Smith, Joyce Sperling, and Jessica Struble. They're all outside the box thinkers.
Yeah.
And you know, these scholars, they've always been noted for doing these out there things, or these things that are beyond the norm. And I said, I gathered them all together and I said, you've all mentored me. You've been wonderful people to me and you've helped me. I want to give back, and I want to do it in this way. And so they said, we will join, we will be a part of this, but there are some stipulations. So I'm going to tell everyone out here, this is how I've become an optimistic journal. So you asked me, what are my scopes and aims? My scopes and aims are to publish innovative scholarship, ideas about fashion or style in the setting of popular culture. And what we mean by popular culture is the context of where we are now. What are we looking for? Anything that somebody feels is worthy of looking at. We have standards. We have our notes for contributors. We have the things that we think are important as far as operationally fitting into this notion of what scholarship is. However, as you know, this is where I become the optimistic editor. I don't have to agree with what you're doing. My job as editor is to look at your manuscript. Have you followed our guidelines of operational setup? Does your paper look of substance? And I send it off to my peer reviewers. As my editorial board, I would be lost without my editorial board and my advisory board. They are wonderful people. We are a working board, so we actually, everyone on the board or the advisory board does 2 peer reviews per year. So everyone participates and everyone plays. And we have people that are tailored. One thing also, James, I want to back up. My editorial board and my advisory board, you will look at them and you will say, who are these people? Well, I actually decided to invite those folks that were scholars, but never invited to be anywhere else in any other journal, to be on my editorial and advisory board. These are also people that do very interesting and advanced work. Yeah. So they review, they do everything for me. They send it back to me. If it passes, we're off and running. If there are issues, I address the issues one-on-one with each person. I do not have a standard, we don't like your manuscript, good luck next time. I actually take the time, read it, send individual emails in a very positive manner. Even if it's a rejection, I want people to know why and feel good about what they've done and why it doesn't fit in or why we can't go forward. However, I will say this, and I'm happy to say this. We have what we call Joe's Second Chance Club. I actually will get a manuscript. If it gets 2 rejections, I send the person the editorial and the comments. We have a comments list that people do when they review. I have the person address the comments. If they want to send me the manuscript, I give them 6 months to a year. If they want to address the comments, they want to try it again, and they send it in again, I send it out to 2 other people. If it gets accepted, they're off and running. So we do give that second chance, only because I think sometimes people do things and they've never done them before.
Yeah, definitely.
And I want to call out 2 people, Marilyn DeLong and Sandy Black, who started Fashion Practice, who published my first manuscript by myself, who gave me that chance. They did the same thing with me, and I kind of learned that from them. So they were very good people to say, hey, if you can make these changes, we'll look at it again. And I appeared in the first issue of Fashion Practice because of that. Yeah. So that's kind of how we operate. That's and to go along the lines of what's going on right now, which is really important, you know, when you're talking about like different ways of looking at marginalized people or different ways of looking at marginalized people that historically have been marginalized, their scholarship it may not be traditional scholarship. It could be something totally different. So you have to look at these things differently. You can't look at everything in this box. That's been the problem. So that's why we try to move beyond this process. And as you know, my editorial board represents the eastern part of the world and the western part of the world. And we represent the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. And we represent basically all walks of life. But that's why I did it that way. And I think it's important.
Most definitely. I mean, that's one of the things you have to do if you're going to have an internationally reputable publication as well. And these are some of the markers of a good publication, that nature of it being international and truly representative. Yeah, and I think also just, you know, some of the comments you have, like often people are intimidated by journal publishing, and it's so vitally important for your future career. And one of the things that I spend a lot of time doing at workshops is talking about your approach, in fact, of how people should be submitting to journals when they're perhaps still writing their PhD thesis. Because even if they're, you know, you're going to expect knockbacks for sure. But, you know, as you've just said, you're going to also get kind of collegial feedback from experts within the field, in addition to the kind of feedback you're going to receive from people who are kind of reviewing your actual thesis. It's just a great way to get peer review and feedback, and learn, again, like learn that, you know, how to write an effective article, because it's a specialist skill.
Well, I was just talking to and I want to, and I don't want to say anything without saying this. Also, it's really important to have an operational team behind your journal. So I have James Campbell, Bethan Ball, and Laura Christopher, and you guys really move it forward. So that's important too.
Well, thank you very much. Yes, let's give a big shout out to my my colleagues and friends who are working tirelessly from home at the moment. So yeah, a couple of them mentioned there, but the whole Intellect team is working very hard. We're very, very busy. We're receiving a huge number of book proposals, and we're running our 105 plus list of journals all out from our homes. Again, big shout out to our partners for making it all possible, and of course for our authors and editors who are doing fantastic work as well. You know, so it is a bit crazy. No, I was just going to say, well, what would be interesting with the journal as well is, I mean, from your, you know, from your insight and your unique position, do you have some tips for people who might be approaching submitting to a journal such as yours?
Yeah, okay. So that's what I was going to say. I was going to say that before, but I wanted to call you guys out because you guys really make my journal fly. The one thing that's important, that's really important, is I have colleagues that are so scared that their manuscript is not done. And I will never forget when I was trying to write my dissertation, and Trish Cunningham says to me, "This isn't the end, it's the beginning. Just get the damn thing done."
Yeah.
And so that's always stuck in my mind. So when I have colleagues that are writing something, I'm like, it's never done. Just admit it, see what happens, and go from there. And so I had one colleague who she really couldn't couldn't really figure out the ending of what she was writing about. And I said, why don't you send it out for peer review to a journal and see if they give you your ending? Guess what? They did. The reviewers did. So, I mean, I think that that's what's really important. So my advice to everyone is, number one, don't be so like, don't be a perfectionist. You know this, and I will tell everyone out there, I am the typo queen when it comes to typos and emails. It's an email. It is not a novel. I'm sending you an email. I don't care if there's a typo in it. So I mean, I'm not a copy editor. That's not what I do. But I tell people that you're going to make mistakes. Things are going to happen. That's fine. Just submit it to someone and see what happens. Because basically what people don't understand is that you have a great team behind you. Once you submit something, once it goes through peer review, once it gets into copy editing, you have a team behind you that are going to make you look good. And I think people are just scared. Most people, I think, are just scared to write. I think they're just really scared to write. I think that's the problem. My problem is I can never find time to do it. But I literally, it was, again, because of my mentorship with Joy and other people, they said, you know what, Joe, you just get up it's like sewing. You get up every day and you do it for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and you really learn how to do it. And I think that's what's important. But yeah, I just think people need to just give it a whirl, and just have, and send it in and see what happens. And don't be afraid of rejection.
No, because I mean, you're going to get rejected, and that's kind of a good thing. So it's part of a process, as you've already said, never-ending story that is. What I would say, though, and I'm sure you'd agree with me, is to ensure that you do your due diligence and research, and whether you choose to work with someone with Intellect or with an open access online-only journal, you need to ensure that they have a robust peer review process. You need to ensure that you are familiar with some of the editorial team or contributors, or that you know them from Adam, kind of thing. And you need to make sure that they're reputable, because it's nothing worse than working and submitting and then ending up paying to publish something in a vanity press, which won't actually count towards sort of your future scholarship or career. So definitely do due diligence and look for a proper, reputable journal, such as the one that Joe edits. Definitely. I mean, any other sort of tips that you might have for people as well, who maybe in regards to, I don't know, things like image rights, or
I do.
Common mistakes you might see, or things that stand out.
I think it's important too, as an editor operationally, if you're going to use, I think everyone, because we live in the times that we live in, I think images are crucial to a lot of projects, and I think they're important. But I think one of the most unused things that people have available to them is a librarian. And they really need to check with the librarian on the proper citation and usage of an image. The other thing too is, don't be upset if you have this paper that you're submitting and it's got all these images in it, and then after it's reviewed, you want to take images out, and the editor says, well, wait a minute, we got to re-review that article then, because they reviewed it with the images in it. So I always tell people, make sure you want to use those images, and make sure that those images are available. Because actually, that goes to what the journal, my associate editor team said, if someone does that and they take the images out, it has to be re-reviewed. So that's the standard that I communicate with individuals. I think that's a tip to always remember, that images are just like words. They are copyrighted. They have, you have to get permission. I think the other thing that for young scholars to always remember, that don't be so, I want to say this word, don't be so narcissistic. Don't be so in your own world that you don't realize that maybe somebody did that before. Did you check? Did you double check to make sure that no one else has done what you're doing? Did you also double check to make sure that what you're doing is correct? Because I run into a lot of time. I love it when people submit papers about the 80s, because I lived through them, and I'm like, that didn't happen. So I think it's important that when you're a young scholar or when you're a new scholar, to really double check your facts and really understand. Maybe there was someone else who did what you did. I always talk about Jennifer Craig. Jennifer Craig did uniforms. She has a book called Uniforms. I did cargo pants, but that didn't mean I couldn't do them because she'd already done it. I added to what she did. So I think that that's important. And then the other thing I think that's really important for junior scholars too, is to understand that it's not an overnight process, as far as once you send out for review that you're going to get something back.
No.
You know, it may take, 60 days to get something back. Remember, the people that are reviewing your paper are doing it for free. They're not getting paid. And so they're doing it as a courtesy. And the other thing is once that's all done and you have to fix it and turn it back in, you might be looking at another 6 months for it to be published, to even a year. So I think that people forget about the lag time in the publishing processes. And that's just out of control for anyone. Look at you. During COVID, everyone thinks they can write a book. I'm serious. Like, how many news stories have I heard that everyone's writing books? And so you've been bombarded with proposals. And so what happens is you just get backlogged, and people need to understand that you're not the only scholar in the world, and you're not the only one doing this. So that's kind of how I really think people should look at things. So, and the other thing I will say to you is, remember this: as a submitter to a journal, you deserve respect and dignity. So you should never feel disrespected when you get the response from the editor. And if you do, don't submit to that journal again.
Yeah,
because
I agree with that.
No editor should treat you like you're a burden. And so I pride myself in not doing that to people. I try,
And I'd congratulate you on that. That's something you're definitely regarded for, is being very collegial and treating people with respect and dignity, which I think is vitally important, especially as we've said, it's a very difficult game to crack into. So I appreciate that. We're into our last 10 minutes. So if anyone has any questions, do throw them up. I might have a few more. While we're talking about the journal, I know one of the things I love about it is that you have regular themed issues.
Yes.
So maybe just highlight a couple of the issues that you found particularly interesting, or what you have in the pipeline, perhaps, if you can mention that.
Well, and I have to tell everyone, this was not, so next year we have quite a few special issues. And again, we did not coordinate this with what's going on in culture, but we have our first issue next year is going to be one on Black Lives Matters, which has been in production for like 2 years. And then we have another issue coming out on eroticism, photography, and eroticism and style. And then we have another one coming out on time and places. And then from there, we're also doing, the following year, we're going to be working on an issue of historically marginalized identities, social justice, fashion, and style. And then we just, Jose and Raul, who you know very well, have been so wonderful to do another issue. We actually did an issue with them in 2015 on Latin American, Latinx culture and fashion. Blew out of the water. And so they're doing another one for us that I think is going to come out in 2022 or 2023. The other thing that I will tell people about, you might have someone on here that says, "Ooh, I want to do a journal." I say the one thing about doing a journal is this: number one, it's not sexy. Number two, you're not a diva. And you're a customer service representative. That's what I call myself. And number three, you really need to have a topic that's broad, not a narrow topic. Your topic, it can be narrow, but have a broad audience or a broad scope within that topic. I always give the idea of merchandising. Merchandising is such a huge area. You've got, retail operations, you've got marketing, you've got branding, you've got financials, you've got a lot under the house of merchandising. So when I went to do this journal, it was actually not my idea. I tell everyone this, not my idea to include style. That was not my idea. I got an email from Ted Polimus, who said to me, "Joe, make sure you use the word style. Nobody does style." And he was so right, because my first papers were all about style. So I think that's what's really, and be willing to take feedback from people. That's really important too. You gave me great, you've mentored me, believe it or not. You're one of my mentors. You've mentored me a lot as an editor. And when we decided to do this journal, you were blunt with me and said, "Hey, it's a huge investment. It's this, and it's going to be a business." And it basically is. It is a small business.
Yeah, and I think one of the things which is great as well, as we talked about your transition from retail into academia, is you're one of the people I love working with because of the fact that you have worked in business and you have worked in, you call yourself a customer service representative, and that is a great approach to things like journal editing. Like you say, not, you know, you're not a diva. It's not sexy. I mean, it can
No.
be a little sexy from time to time, but yeah, it's
see
definitely.
you and think that it is. And the one thing I have to say is you have to want to, in reality, your journal has to make money. And the reason why it has to make money is because it has to stay afloat in publishing, because it's printed on paper. I mean, this is not cheap to do. So you really need to think about those things when you're approaching things. And you asked me one thing earlier, and I want to go back to it really fast.
Sure.
Remember, when I say I'm a customer service rep, I always say this. I've had people walk up to me at conferences and say, "Oh my God, Joe, it's so nice to meet you. I'm so-and-so." And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's the person that sent the article on blankety blank to me. Like, I finally meet them face to face. And you want to create a good impression of yourself to people in email and treat them with dignity and respect, because you may meet them someday. And also, I've actually had somebody come up to me that we rejected and said, "You were so nice to do this with me." And I actually referred them to another journal. So, I mean, I think that that's important too. So just remember, when you're dealing with people, they are people. I think that's the most important thing. And that I try to do every day, you know, that I try. It's very hard, but it's something you should do.
Okay, I'm just going to quite spin around now because we're coming to our last few minutes. So I just want to say, I want to say, well, first of all, if anyone's interested in Joe's journal, fashion, style, and popular culture, and wants to find out more about Joe, you can go to the Drexel website, or you can go to www.intellectbooks.com and search for fashion, style, and popular culture. On there, you'll find a lot more information about the journal, and you'll see open call for papers, so you can submit your own work to that directly. I also
we have Instagram.
Oh, and do follow the Instagram.
FSPC_journal. Yep.
And I just want to say, Joe, thank you so much for joining me today. I really do.
I'm honored.
And it's great. I mean, great chatting with you always, but also some great information there for people. But as my last kind of question, because you are the king of cargo pants, what cargo pants do you wear?
I've actually done the slim down version now. So now my cargo pants are a little like Banana Republic-esque.
Okay.
They're the slimmer. They're not the big and bulky.
Yeah.
You can't see well, maybe I can do this. I actually do have on a semi ruggedy short today. So I'm actually wearing a cargo-esque short, but don't laugh, during COVID, I've been addicted to elastic waist everything.
I can beat you. I can beat you. Business at top, pie down bottom. That's my cat short. Wearing my cat swimming shorts. So you've got to be comfortable when you're doing these interviews, I think. You've got to be comfortable.
Yeah,
so
go ahead.
I was going to say, so Banana Republic, slim down. And again, just the last couple of minutes, any brands that you particularly like venerate, any brands that you particularly love, or, for the stories that they tell, that kind of thing?
Well, I always have loved, actually, across the UK, I always say one of the best storytellers is Vivienne Westwood. She tells a great story. And the fact that she has gone full circle and is now all protecting the planet while at the same time creating clothing. And she's doing it in a smart manner, in a sustainable manner. People should look at her tote bags. She has tote bags that are made out of completely recycled material. I think she tells a great story. On my side of the pond, who's telling a great story globally and really reaching out to the world, I think right now, is Coach.
Okay.
Coach has done a fantastic job, and they are hot in Asia. They are hot. They are that American brand that no one really knew much about, but now they're growing, which is weird. So they're an affordable luxury. So no more LV, no more Gucci. Let's go to Coach, because more people can buy it. So I think they're telling a good story right now too.
Okay. All right. Well, on that note, thank you so much, Joe, for joining me. Everyone do check out Joe's forthcoming books as well. He has a book on jeans coming out. He's got a great back catalogue of work. So do go on to intellectbooks.com or just Google him and you'll find loads of wonderful things out there to inspire you in your own writing. So, Joe, great to see you. Thank you very much. And again, everyone, thank you for joining and tuning in. We'll be back on next Wednesday, so keep your eyes out, and I'll announce who my next guest will be over the coming days. Joe, great to see you. Thanks, my friend.
Thank you. Anyone can reach out to me. I really appreciate you doing this, James.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.